talk about talented people, can there really be any more talented people or persons than this particular individual we're about to share with you today? We're talking about a man that really was a producer, songwriter, performer, director. I mean, he literally did everything. So much so that even in London today, he actually has a theatre named after him, and rightly so. We're talking about Sir Noel Coward, and here is where he lived for over 26 years. Now, Belgravia is one of the most expensive areas in London, and naturally one would assume that Sir Noel would live here. Of course, his playground really was the likes of the Dorchester, the Savoy, and all good places where you may be seen, the influence, if you like, of that particular period. Now, I've been lucky enough to meet and interview many different people that have worked or knew Sir Noel. In fact, one of them, a very good friend of mine, Sir Michael Caine, worked with Sir Noel, obviously on the Italian Job. And I said, what was he like? And he said, well, look, towards the end of his life, he was a little bit more mellow. He'd calmed down. He was glad of the work because consequently, what had happened was he'd sort of fallen out of favour again. That's the problem when you're a megastar. You're in and then you're out. Let's not forget that Noel hit really the big time in the 1920s. And by the 1930s, he'd had mega success on both sides of the Atlantic, here in London's West End with Private Lives, and then on Broadway too. But he was bigger than that. By the 1940s, he created what many people suggested was the seminal war film, In Which We Serve. He starred, produced, wrote it, and directed. As Sir John Mills pointed out to me very nicely, and Richard Attenborough, there was barely space for anybody else in the movie. But of course, he created it. Now, his big rivals of the day were many different people, as one could imagine. Binky Beaumont was a theatrical impresario that really controlled London's West End and decided whether things were hit or not. And of course, Sir Noel Coward himself really shot back into fame in the 1950s, all thanks to the likes of Frank Sinatra, no less. Frank Sinatra was a huge fan and encouraged Noel to appear in Las Vegas. He did. And this famous album, LP, vinyl, whatever you want to call it, now is a collector's item. He literally wowed the crowd. Every A-lister in Hollywood wanted to come out and see Sir Noel Coward. The biggest thing, of course, was being knighted. He loved it. The Queen Mother was a huge favourite of Sir Noel and often invited him to Buckingham Palace and, of course, Kensington Palace for afternoon tea and chit-chats. She loved him so much, they unveiled a bust of his in the Theatre Royal, Drury Lane in Covent Garden. That's how powerful he was. Noel Coward leaves behind an absolute mega wealth of wonderful work. And what I liked about him was his dry wit, the debonair style, and simply the fact that he created a landscape of wonderful entertainment that even today lives on. His plays are often revived, not just here in the United Kingdom and on Broadway, but elsewhere around the world. And when you think of someone who was the true English gentleman, you would have to say that Noel Coward was definitely up there. It was all self-created, and as he admitted, he had limited talent, no great looks, but a lot of drive. And that drive made him quite literally unique. And it's here where a lot of that work, here in the very heart of Belgravia, was created. We owe Noel Coward a lot, and if you haven't checked him out, do look at a particular interview alongside him and the likes of Judy Garland. Let's not forget also, he brought Marlene Dietrich to London at the infamous Café de Paris, where he introduced her live on the stage. She was ultimately thrilled. Of course, they had a bit of a love-hate relationship. But basically, they got on, had great admiration for each other, as did many stars that Noel offended with his caustic wit. But ultimately, everybody remembers the supreme talent of Noel Coward. If you haven't checked him out yet, do. And if you come to London and you can afford to wander down Belgravia, it's free, check out this beautiful home that Sir Noel made his home for 26 plus years. Neil Shaw, Belgravia, London.